All right, good morning and welcome to the 2021 Virtual Spring Summit. We're all very excited to have you all here, and we have a lot of really great content planned for you today. So quick introduction, my name is Caitlin Chapman, and I'm the 2021 Spring Summit Chair, as well as the VP of Professional Enrichment for the SWE Rocky Mountain section. So I'm excited to see all of you here this morning and throughout the day. I also want to take a minute to thank the Spring Summit Committee who helped make all of this possible. We spent a lot of time planning this, organizing everything, and especially pivoting everything to a virtual format this year. I just want to thank them all for their time and efforts in making this happen. I also want to take a minute to thank all of our sponsors for today. So we have our keynote book sponsor, which is sponsored by American Company, and they will be raffling off 50 of Joe Miller's Women of Influence book, both throughout the session, and we'll also be raffling some in the award ceremony this afternoon. So stay tuned for all the winners for those. I'd also like to thank our gold sponsor, which is Keysight Technologies, and our silver sponsor of Ball. You guys will have an opportunity to talk with them throughout the day, as well as during the lunch break. There are networking rooms for them where representatives from their company will be able to speak with you if you're interested in learning more about their company and meeting some people that work there. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Heather Doty, who is going to give our opening remarks for the event this morning. Heather started out in SWE with being the 6th grade essay content participant and going all the way to Society President. Heather Doty has a long history with SWE, having served in a variety of leadership roles, including every officer position in the Rocky Mountain section over the years. When not hosting webinars, podcasts, and committee and board meetings on every virtual platform for SWE, by day she's the staffing and workforce development lead for the manufacturing and test operations organization at Ball Aerospace. And she lives in Boulder with SWE first dude Jeremy and the recently adopted rescue kitty Chief Sullivan. So Heather, take it away.
Thanks so much, Caitlin, and good morning, everyone. I am not going to be sharing slides today. I went just old school. You're gonna look at my face and listen to me talk. But I was chatting with my mother a couple of weeks ago about the fact that I was going to be giving this talk, and I wanted my remarks to tie in with the theme, because I love the theme of this summit. Embrace uncertainty, find your true north. It just really speaks to me. I feel like it could have been my motto had I developed one for myself, but I never got around to that. So thanks for coming up with that for me. But I told her what the theme was, and she said, that sounds like a complete oxymoron. How can you possibly find your true north by embracing uncertainty? Like, that makes no sense to me. I can't do it. And it took me aback because, again, like I said, it really resonated with me. So I started to think about all of that and why that is. And so I thought I'd share a little bit about my journey of how I have ended up where I am along the way. And then maybe through that, we'll kind of point at why I think this theme so resonates for me. And then I'll talk a little bit about how that has carried through the presidency this year of SWE. So, growing up, people are always asking you when you're young, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always hated that question when I was in elementary school because I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be an author of either like sci-fi, fantasy, and or mysteries, or maybe both mixed together. I loved Nancy Drew, loved Tolkien, all of those kind of books. I wanted to be a teacher. I just loved learning and figuring stuff out. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. I wanted to be a builder. I wanted to be an artist. There were so many things I wanted to do. And I could never answer that question. And people would try to help me. They'd prompt me by saying, well, what subject do you like most in school? And I couldn't decide. It changed every week. I liked math. I liked social studies. I liked creative writing. I liked reading books and learning things. ultimately, that's what it came down to. I loved learning. And so I kind of quit worrying about it for a while, and I just decided I'd focus on learning, and I loved learning. Education was hugely valued in my household. There was never any question I was going to college. I didn't realize that that wasn't a thing that everybody just did after high school. I'm not sure when I realized that that wasn't what everyone did, because it was just what was expected in my household. However, money was always very tight when I was growing up. And so I also knew that I needed to go to college, but we didn't quite know how I was going to pay for it. But one option might be, if I did really well in school, I could get scholarships and then I could get to college. So I knew it was important to go to college. I knew that that had something to do with needing to have financial security. I knew that financial security was tenuous and could be difficult to achieve. So I loved learning. I wanted financial security. And then I went along and got to middle school and high school, and a couple of subjects started to emerge as my favorites. I loved band. I played flute. I got really into practicing and just continuous improvement process through that. And I really enjoyed math. It seemed to come more easily to me than perhaps it did some of my classmates. I found myself tutoring everyone else in math. And I actually enjoyed helping other people figure out how to succeed in math. It seemed to be something that a lot of folks would struggle with, but I kind of understood it well. And I liked helping other people figure that out. So ultimately, band was really my favorite, and I really thought I was going to be a professional musician in about 7th grade. And I think that financial security upbringing that I had, my mom kind of was like, well, you know, music's great, keep doing it. It's awesome. It's clear that you love it. You should do what you love, but maybe also think about something that might be easier to pay the bills with. And she knew I loved math, and I had my math teacher my junior year, the calculus teacher at the high school. I hadn't even had her yet, but she'd heard about me somehow, I guess, from my junior year math teacher, and invited me to join the junior engineering technical society team for my high school. And it was me and 7 guys going off to do basically this giant engineering test as a group in the chapel at the UCD campus. And it was really fun to try to problem solve and work with that team and everything. And I really enjoyed that. And I was like, hey, maybe I could do this engineering thing. And then my mom jumped all over that. She was like, yeah, engineering, because the engineers that she knew at her office, she knew that they made good money. And she was like, that seems like a better way for you to, you know, get fed in your life. She never said that out loud to me, but I think in retrospect, that was maybe a little bit of it. But I wasn't ready to give up the music. So I decided I'm going to do both. I'm going to major in music and engineering. And then I had to figure out where I was going to go to school. And after I took the SATs, I did fairly well on them. The school brochures started rolling in, and I was looking at brochures from all over the country. I remember looking specifically at USC, at MIT, at Purdue, all these places. And at first, you know, I'd envision what it would be like to be at school at these places. And I wanted to go to a school that had both music and engineering. I saw a lot of Mines folks sharing backdrops and stuff this morning. That's why I didn't end up at Mines, is because you could be in the band, but there wasn't a music degree. So anyway, trying to decide where I was going to go to school, it was overwhelming because there seemed to be so many choices. And I kept envisioning what it would be like to live in other parts of the country. And I kept kind of rejecting that. And it took me a long time to figure out why. And it's because I am really close with my family and my friends, and several of my friends, most of my friends were staying in state. And I really just ultimately decided I didn't want to relocate at that point in my life. I think people, when they're making college decisions, they're of two minds. They either want to stay close to home or they want to get as far away as possible. I was clearly that first, because my friends and family were so important to me. And ultimately, I applied only to CU and CSU, and I'll date myself a bit to say that ultimately the final decision was because CU was a local phone call and CSU was long distance, and it was going to cost more to stay in touch with my friends and family, which is why I made the decision to stay here in Colorado. So I went to CU Boulder, and I majored in engineering and music, and I really enjoyed the dichotomy of doing both. And about, I don't know, my sophomore year in my music program, I got really discouraged because I was just not as good as the other flutists in the flute studio in the music school. And it bugged me, and I couldn't get into practicing. Like I just wasn't mastering what it was that my teacher was trying to get me to master. It's like I'd progressed really far with playing the flute, and then I kind of hit this wall, and I was kind of depressed about it for a while, and I didn't have time to practice as much as the music majors because I had to go study for my calculus tests because I was also doing engineering. And that's when like the realization struck me that I'm like, you know what, engineering is going to be my job, music's going to be my passion. I don't have to make a living at this. I don't have to be as good as all of these other folks in the music program. So it was like the biggest relief. And then all of a sudden I started making more progress with music because it took the pressure off myself. I just started enjoying it for what it was, which was, you know, an opportunity to do something different during the day, to express myself in a different way. And as soon as I let go of the pressure, it was like all of a sudden I could succeed at that. Funnily enough, when I decided to major in engineering, I didn't know what kind of engineering I wanted to do. I didn't actually know that much about engineering other than there was math involved and I like math. And I ended up choosing civil engineering only because I had this interest in architecture from a young age. Part of my doodles, I would always like design floor plans of dream houses that often for the older Colorado natives here, this might be a reference for you. My dream house often looked a lot like Celebrity Sports Center because there were multiple water slides into the pool in the basement of my house. Just for fun, that was part of the dream. But architecture was kind of an interest of mine, so I chose civil engineering because it was the closest one to architecture, right? And then all throughout school, I was like, is civil engineering really what I like to do? I really, really enjoyed my structures classes. Geotech water classes were not my favorites, but I didn't hate it and I still kind of liked it. And I was like, it's broad, it's the oldest engineering discipline. I can do whatever I want from here. And ultimately, I went on and got my master's degree because the coolest structural engineering jobs kind of required them to do really unique bridges and crazy, difficult office buildings and museums and things. But I got really kind of sick of concrete towards the end. Like, what am I going to do with my life if I don't go be a civil structural engineer? This is what I just spent 6.5 years of school doing. And it kind of freaked me out. And I was cleaning out my room because I didn't know what else to do. And I came across an engineering news record magazine with a story about the Experience Music Project Museum in Seattle, which is now the Museum of Pop Culture. So if any of you are familiar with that, it sits at the base of the Space Needle. It's got all these crazy curved surfaces, Frank Gehry architecture. I was like, that would be a cool project to be a structural engineer on. I read through the article, and at that point in time, there weren't many civil structural engineers doing the kind of 3D modeling needed for those crazy curvy surfaces. It was very similar to aircraft work. So they had contracted structural engineers from Boeing to work on that project. And that's when I was like, that's it, I'm going into aerospace. I just decided that day I wanted to stay in Colorado. Again, local ties, wanted to do all that. I love Boulder. I'm going to go work at Ball. I'm going to make sure that they hire me. And it took a little while getting in there, but I had a lot of fun in college working with SWE, touring folks around the engineering center. I was an engineering ambassador. So I had done a lot of work through the dean's office, and the director of student programs at the time knew that I wanted to get hired at Ball and I hadn't gotten an interview yet. And she was going to go talk with Ball and she said, hey, I'm going to go talk with them. Give me your resume. I'll take it with me. And the day after her meeting, I got a call from the hiring manager in the structures department, and he said, my boss says I have to interview you. I was like, well, this man hates me already, but I'm going in for my interview. It turns out he didn't. He just thought he was being funny. He has a quirky sense of humor. He's a great guy, retired. We're friends on Facebook. We hang out, we drink beer. It's awesome in non-COVID times. So ended up getting the job at Ball because of that connection of all of the work that I had done. And I have enjoyed my time there immensely, spent 15.5 years doing structural engineering though, but I knew that ultimately my destiny was not to be that staff consultant, structural engineer expert. I enjoyed doing it, but it wasn't what motivated me. I was really motivated by helping the people on my projects solve their problems. I really enjoyed mentoring other people. And ultimately, I thought I wanted to do some kind of management. I didn't know exactly which way I wanted to go, if I wanted to be a functional manager, a program manager. I've also always had this interest in personal finance, as has kind of been mentioned before. So I decided to get my MBA. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it, but I knew that Ball would pay for it and it could open any of those possible opportunities for me. So I went and got my MBA in Ball, and then other opportunities emerged, and I had the chance to become the engineering integration manager. So I was reporting directly to the vice president of engineering at Ball, doing strategic projects across that organization. And that was designed to be a rotational kind of role. So I stopped after about 2 years, and then I needed to do something else. And that's when I really took the toehold to dive into the uncertainty. And I realized I don't really care necessarily about what I'm doing, as long as I'm able to make an impact, bring something somewhat unique to the table, and learn while I'm doing it. So it really matters to me who I'm working with. The people are what matter to me. So I decided to choose my next boss instead of my next what I'm going to do. And so I went to a manager at the company that I really respect, and I said, hey, I'd like to come work for you. I don't know very much about your organization other than one particular aspect I interfaced with earlier in my career. And I said, what do you think? I can bring some different ways of thinking and diversity and inclusion. You know, because he didn't have a lot of diversity in his leadership team at the time that I joined. And we thought about it a little while, and he created a role, and that's what I'm doing now. So it was pretty fun. So what I've talked about is a lot of times where I've clearly not been one of those people who has a 5-year or a 10-year vision or knows exactly where I want to go. But I've always been like open to lots of possibilities. And I've never wanted to narrow my choices prematurely. But what I have always done is recognize what is important to me. And whenever you're uncertain about something, it can certainly be uncomfortable. That's the certainty and uncertainty, I guess, is that feeling of being uncomfortable. And so what I have done is, when I'm feeling that, is focused on what I do know. What are my values, my non-negotiables? For me, it's learning, financial security, friends and family, service, developing others. Those are the things that matter to me. And oftentimes I don't necessarily know, other than those kind of guiding principles, what's the yes, but I often have oh, it's not that. So using those couple of things paired with letting go of what no longer serves you. So those are the two key guiding principles to helping you find your true north, which then helps you embrace that uncertainty. So let me fast forward a little bit and touch on how that's gone this year as the president of SWE, right? So, you know, the term runs June 1st to July 30th. But as president-elect of SWE, you're getting ready that whole year to become the president. And I'll say the way that our kind of planning cycle goes, our third quarterly in-person meeting in a typical year, Board 3 is what we call it, which is in conjunction with our Congressional Visits Day and typically takes place in March, is really where we're starting to figure out what we're going to get tied up this year. We're reviewing our progress against our operational plan. We're starting to realize what we're not probably going to finish this year and might carry over into next year. We're beginning to look at the first pass of the operational budget for the following year. There's a lot of kind of sausage making done at this Board 3 meeting. And this is, like I said, it's in conjunction with Congressional Visit Day, which was also happened to be on my birthday last year. Congressional Visit Day was, and I have a good friend who lives in the DC area. So I went out a day early for Congressional Visit Day, and Cindy Hoover, who was president last year, had arranged a tour, a White House tour for us the day before all of this SWE programming took place. So I took an extra day of vacation. I went out a day early. I traveled to DC on Monday, March 9th. Congressional Visit Day was on Thursday, March 12th, my birthday, and the training session was on Wednesday, March 11th, which was the day that the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 as a pandemic. And that morning, there was a broadcast email from work. Work was sponsoring my participation in the whole week's activities that said, hey, travel is now VP approval only. So I contacted my VP and I said, I'm on travel now, what do I do? And they hadn't made it a formal policy, but I was advised that probably coming home as quickly as possible would be advantageous. So I changed my flights, and instead of going to our training and Congressional Visit Day, I flew home that night, had my birthday off, and participated in our SWE board meetings virtually. And that was the start of virtual SWE presidency. And there was a lot we didn't know at that point in time, right? We kind of scrapped talking about next year's budget. We kind of realized, hey, we have no idea what's going to go on next year. We need to revise this, but we kind of went into well, what do we know? What do we know about what SWE is and what SWE wants to be, even though we don't know how we can operate? We knew that our mission was important to us. We wanted to continue to offer the fabulous programs and services that our members and the folks that we provide outreach to have come to rely on. We wanted to continue to be that network and that source of support for people when we were going through these unprecedented, difficult times. We knew we were celebrating our 70th anniversary of SWE. We knew we wanted SWE to last at least another 70 years. So we wanted to focus on remaining relevant and remaining in business, if you will, even though we're a nonprofit. And finally, we wanted to make sure that our staff and our stakeholders would all remain safe. So though we didn't know at that time how long or how bad the pandemic would get, we knew we had to put things in place so that we would have alternatives all along the way for how we could get our work done. So we immediately started investigating the possibility of virtual options for our conference, though at that point we were hoping that they would still be a hybrid conference. Clearly that didn't happen. We had to tweak a lot of stuff, but we remained true to what was important to us. And we planned for a virtual conference for FY20, which was supposed to be in New Orleans. When we decided to go to a fully virtual conference, we were very hopeful that maybe we could get 7,500 people to attend. In the end, because of what SWE means to people and the fact that we were able to stay true to what we needed, we had a record-breaking attendance, 18,825 registrants for the first ever and hopefully last ever fully all virtual conference that SWE hosted. It was amazing. And part of that was there were silver linings. There were a lot of people who were able to participate in the conference who couldn't travel for economic reasons or safety reasons or couldn't get off of work. We made the content available for a full year so that people could engage with it on their own time. We've recognized all along, we've always known that flexibility is important to our demographic of women engineers, right? So we made that conference so flexible for everyone to participate. And I'm so proud of what happened there. We made our key focus be on those, on remaining relevant, keeping true to SWE's core values: integrity, inclusive environment, mutual support, professional excellence, and trust. And I think that was the key, and that's been our guiding principle. We've also had to let some stuff go this year. We had some new programs we were planning to roll out and target, and they were ready to go, but it wasn't the right time because of the uncertainty that was going on in the world. And it's not like we're saying never, we're just, we're not saying no, we're saying not now. And that one letter makes a big difference, and that's that W in SWE, right? So, great successes came out of adversity, and it all started from, figuring out what's important, finding that true north for myself, for SWE as an organization, and using that power and knowledge to embrace the uncertainty and come out the other side. And I think we're still doing okay. I think even this conference maybe has almost a record turnout in this virtual time. So I thank you all for joining me from your living rooms or your offices or wherever you are on a Saturday. And I'm just about ready to introduce our keynote, Joe Miller, but if anybody had one or two questions, I think I have time. Feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat.
I have a question.
Sure.
You talked a lot about making decisions and questioning and reflecting on like what you wanted to do. Did that ever stress you out and just kind of cause you to panic because you didn't know what to do? And then if so, like what did you do to kind of minimize that or put yourself in the place of like, okay, well, I'm still progressing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's almost second nature to second guess yourself at times, but I think I grew up so long with my mom. My mom always had the serenity prayer up in our house, accept the things you cannot change, and all of that. And I think part of it is really defining what do I have control over, what don't I have control over, what do I know and what don't I know, and how can I live with the uncertain parts. And so sometimes it was this pressure to feel like, oh, I ought to be doing something because everybody else is, right? Everybody else seems to know what they want to do. How come I don't? And actually, as it turns out, when you talk to people, most people don't actually know what they want to do. But I like what I'm doing right now, and that's okay. If there's something that I hate that I'm doing right now, it's like, how can I get out of this as soon as possible? But other times it's like, well, maybe the options are kind of small. I remember when I first realized I didn't want to be a structural engineer for the rest of my life. It was 2008, 2009. That was not a good time to be trying to decide to change jobs because the economy was in the toilet. And so at that point, it was a little bit more of, okay, how can I figure out a way to like what I'm doing now while I figure out next potential steps when the opportunity advances. So I think part of it was just trying to find those couple key things where I could maintain control or have answers while continuing to explore the other options.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Maybe one more question or none. Yes, you can absolutely still access the WE20 content. I have a couple sessions that I didn't get to that, you know, come July 1, I'm going to be spending time hanging out on the WE conference. You know, and one of my SWE mentors, Jill Tejan, who a lot of you know, she's always saying, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up either. And it's always nice when a mentor says, I don't know what I want to do. It's okay to not know. Do you like what you're doing now? Being present is part of that. Well, I thank you all for joining this morning and listening to me. And I'm super excited about our keynote speaker this morning.